Welcome back, everybody, to Middle Earth. This is the Watching Now podcast, and we are deep diving into The Rings of Power Season 2. I'm super excited. This is going to be a pretty good episode breakdown, I think. And I once again am joined by On, the lovely
Hi.
On, who is, she has her own show on her TTRPG show called Roll D5. Go check it out. On, tell us real quick, where could I find Roll D5?
Yeah, Roll D5 is basically everywhere as ROLED5. We mostly do live streams, but we keep all of our VODs on Twitch. Or on YouTube. We're live on Twitch.
I like
you
it.
meant what I knew.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm picking up what you're throwing down.
I smell what you're stepping in.
And our other host / guest is Chris, longtime friend, also incredible foodie. I've known this guy a long time, makes some incredible, delicious meals. But also, more importantly, he's our Tolkien expert on this show. And by expert, I just mean he has more knowledge than probably the two of us on this show.
Yeah.
There's probably other people that are probably smarter than Chris, maybe. I'm going to throw it out there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have Tolkien scholar heroes that I look up to and will never live up to. But I've read a lot of these books.
Yeah. Read a lot of the books, and I'm going to ask Chris. I usually ask Chris and On a lot of questions because I am the Tolkien. I wouldn't say noob. I've read the books. I've read the main books. I've read The Hobbit. I've read Lord of the Rings. Love the movies. Love everything about fantasy. Loving this show. And let's get jumping right into it because we're going to talk about episode 6. Where is he? We're going to start real quick with a non-spoiler, just sort of tell us what you thought of this episode 6.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. I had an issue with how many jumps there were, and it made the episode feel really short, and I felt like there should have been more, even though it was just the same amount of content as we've been getting. But the stuff that we did have, I enjoyed looking into more.
We almost touched base on every character this episode, and therefore there's a lot to there's a lot of jumping
update,
around.
But nothing huge except of course with Sauron, but well, I guess, and Númenor, but
Númenor, Chris, what did you how are you feeling about this episode?
Yeah, I like this episode. I continue to enjoy this season quite well. I like that there's a lot of characters, but then again, I'm going to enjoy the character-driven plots, the dialogue, and the action is cool when it comes in. But an episode like this, where you get to see all the characters, almost or many of them, I like it. This one has, especially Elendil. This is kind of ever since season 1, Elendil. I've wanted to see him in this kind of heroic mode, and this episode, I think you're finally getting. It's been building up with this showing that he's one of the faithful, but now this is good stuff. I like. We'll talk about all this stuff. I like a lot of the Bombadil and Gandalf stuff. Yeah. And one other thing that we mentioned in a previous episode is we have another portrayal of the orc problem. I'm excited
to kind of talk about that more because I'm with you guys. I'm right there. I guess I'm leaning more towards. There's a lot of stuff that happened in this episode that I feel it's let's get this thing moving. It's there wasn't a lot of movement character development wise. It was I already feel like we've driven home the relationship between Durin and Durin, and I'm we don't need more of that. I get it, what I'm saying? And kind of feel like I already kind of know what's going on with Celebrimbor and Sauron. I'm I feel like we still dwelled on that longer than we needed to. I'm ready to go to the next stage, right?
It's almost they were showing off.
Yeah.
But with not a lot of progress.
Right. It's people had things to do, but it was already stuff that we could have maybe skipped over. It felt like someone was just adding flourish here.
Yeah.
Definitely a deepening more than an advancement of the plot.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. But I still enjoyed it to both of y'all's point. There are some... Again, the highlights outweigh the bad stuff, right? And we'll get into that. Let's jump into that right now. Just fair warning, right after this point, spoilers. So if you haven't watched the episode, Go check it out, then come back and listen to us kind of break it down scene by scene. So let's get into the episode breakdown. Opening scene, we start on Arondir, and he's taking a little stroll in the forest, and I guess he's walking by himself, which right away I was like, oh, interesting, and he seems to be tracking the orcs and looking for Adar as he promised he would from the Ints, and we get right away he's like sneaking behind a rock, and then an orc kind of almost gives him the cleave with a battle axe, but you can't take out Arondir. He's too badass. So he takes out 3 orcs willy-nilly.
He totally did that on purpose too. So it's like, oh, you think you're surprising me? Well, actually I'm surprising you.
Yeah. It was I'll give it to this show. They definitely make Arondir like he is the Legolas of the show. Like when he kills somebody, he does it with flourish.
Yes.
Like there always seems to be, it's like, that's like, did you see that? Did you see what I did there? Yeah. It looked pretty good. Do you see the backflip kick thing
it's like
I did?
A deadly, beautiful dance.
But I guess I was surprised he was alone. I don't know why. I assumed
Isildur would go with him?
Yeah. I thought, like, they didn't really kind of make that clear, like, where's Isildur? And Theo obviously isn't with him, and they kind of went their separate ways, and...
Yeah, we did need like a little bit of a conversation about that. Like my gut feeling is that Isildur is trying to get back to Númenor. So he's kind of like, well, if the love of my life is with somebody else, I guess I'll go home.
Yeah. Yeah, because that whole thread kind of just like unthreaded, and we now know nothing of. It's now the Arondir show, and
which I'm not mad about.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, we don't really know. We don't know where it's going to pick up. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's just weird when like I felt like they were pairing these two together as like kind of like on their journey. Yeah. That's how the show started, right? Like, okay, we've paired these 3 or 4 people together. We're pairing these for this storyline. These characters are on this storyline, right? And like I feel like when one of them just drops off without like a conversation of like, I'm going back to Númenor, you know, like I'll see you later around here, and give the bear hug, and like, or you know, there was none of that. It kind of just felt like
there was just a scene that just was missing.
Well, if nothing else, this show has shown us that characters can get from one place to the other really quickly and join back in wherever they want to be.
Yeah, right. Fast travel does exist on the show. He searches one of the orcs and finds a drawing of Eregion. So he kind of, I guess we get the sense that we can put 2 and 2 together as the audience and assume that Arondir is going to be heading towards Eregion as well. And that's the last we get. That's all we get of Arondir this episode.
That's so it. That's more.
It's like okay, and we've moved on. And we're heading
up in the heat of battle. Surprisingly, like
I know. Be great. I was waiting.
Before we move on, though, I do want to point out there is something else I think is significant in this scene, and it's what the orcs are talking about as they're going through the woods before you know Arondir's there, and what they're saying is something to the effect of, you know, when this is over, we'll desert and go set up on our own, something like that. It's reminiscent of the same conversation that I referenced when we talked about the orc problem earlier. That Sam overhears orcs in Ciar Thungol when they say something similar, like if once all this war is over, we can go and set up on our own with a few trusty lads, and that's significant. But more on that later.
Yeah, it kind of felt like they didn't want to be doing this, right? I got the sense that they were like, I don't want to be doing this whole war thing.
Yeah,
they would rather be.
Let's go set up and have a life of our own, and not have to be subservient to a master, whether that's Adar or Sauron.
It brings out that great area that Tolkien
it's significant.
wanted.
Real quick, do you think they'll be able to kind of really deliver on that, or do you think they're just sort of teasing this out to kind of put in?
Well,
like, and by deliver on it, I mean like, is this going to be like a plot point that is brought up as like, are we supposed to feel bad when these orcs die? Because that conversation happens, and then 2 seconds later, Arondir just he basically takes him out.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult, and especially considering the fact that Tolkien himself was aware of this problem and couldn't solve it himself. He never, to his satisfaction, came up with a good answer. It would be, I think, hubris if the show purported to show an answer. Not that they couldn't do it, but dangerous ground there when the professor himself couldn't do this. I think that if I personally, I'm aware of this work problem. You can read about it in Morgoth's Ring. You can read about it in Letters of Tolkien. I've known that this was a thing, but it's never really been fully depicted, because if you think about the trilogy, how many did you kill? 42. Oh, this is 43. It's okay to slaughter orcs as if they're just fodder for your weapons, and that's not quite correct. We shouldn't think about them that way. Yeah. And if that's all you get is think a little bit deeper about them, then I'm fine with that, because that's kind of where it stands in the lore.
But it's going to be weird when this show is also trying to tell you, like, yeah, but they want to have families and they want to kind of do their, are they going to be able to have their cake and eat it too here, I guess is sort of, I don't know. You
could imagine a conversation after that battle between, say, Legolas and Gimli and Gandalf and Aragorn, where you have the Legolas and Gimli still bragging about the battle, Aragorn just kind of listening and being a little bit wiser, and then maybe Gandalf coming in and saying something like, one of his wise sayings, like, "Well, did you ever consider that maybe they didn't even want to be here? That they would be rather be doing something else too? And sure, we have to defend ourselves, and there's nothing wrong, but maybe we shouldn't be celebrating in that kind of way." And,
right?
This sort of thing could happen. Yeah. And I mean, even to that point. I think there's 2 orcs, and then an unseen third one jumps out at Arondir and attacks him, and he's defended himself. So it's both. It's okay,
it's war.
But think about it. There's something going on here.
So we're back in Eregion, and Celebrimbor is struggling to make the 9 rings, the rings for men. And he is like he holds a ring and is like, "This isn't it, guys. We have to do better. We have to work harder." And Murdanya Murdania's like, "We're working as hard as we can." We're doing it. And he's like, "And we're out of mithril." So he's like, "Well, then go get some more. Like, that's not my problem." And Anatar kind of comes in, and he's sort of like advising him, and he's saying, Celebrimbor's still frustrated. He's like, "Anatar, you got to deal with this problem. You got to get it. You got to get more mithril. And by the way, you got to take over control of city administration."
Well, he doesn't tell him to take control.
That's true.
Of the city. But I find it fun that he's like, Celebrimbor is starting to just kind of like forget things. He's so
he couldn't
in
remember
his
her
own
name.
mind.
Like I couldn't remember her name.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm under the influence.
You have one of the rings of men.
Well, he's been gaslit too, and you can even see with the hammer.
That was so good.
Yeah, that's a classic maneuver right there. And that sort of thing does make you doubt your sanity, and can make you. And when you're doing that sort of thing, you can misremember things, because you don't know what's going on anymore.
So I didn't have time to go back and watch this episode a second time, and. Was the hammer? He's like, "I can't find my hammer."
Yeah, he's like, "It was right here. I set it here, but it didn't look like it was there." And he's like, "That hammer?" And he's like, "Wait a second," and it's back.
So it definitely shows that it's not there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought that, but I was like, is he just like actually going? But from our POV, Sauron's made the hammer disappear and then brought it back into the world.
Right.
Yeah. And I think we should take a moment to appreciate Anatar's outfit change. I think it is stunning. Literally showing his true colors with like the like golden light with the black and like the like almost like feather shoulder pauldron piece. But it's his hair that is the most important thing, because from the back, the way his hair is tied, it looks like a bow. Because he is the gift.
Like the gift.
Oh my God! The Lord of Gifts.
The gift.
Lord of
Yes.
In many ways, and so the whole internet was like, "Oh my gosh, the bow in his hair!"
I didn't notice.
That's awesome.
It was
That's
spectacular.
Awesome.
I was reading like man bun, but the bow, that's.
It's weird. I didn't directly notice an outfit change, but he does feel more like postured. I felt like in this episode, like broad shouldered, even like he felt large or
powerful.
like and And I don't know if that's like the actor kind of portraying it that way, or the outfit kind of designed to kind of
Definitely both.
yeah.
Charlie Vickers would do that.
Everything's starting to crumble around Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
Like people are starting to notice, and Sauron or Anatar is continuing to manipulate, but putting a lot more pressure, I feel like, on him, because I get the sense, and what we get to this in the next scene, where he goes outside and tells everybody, he's like, I'm taking over not control of the city, but the administration of this city. Bring all your problems to me. And a guard's like, hey, come check this out. And he walks over and they find a dead elf with carvings on his chest.
Yes.
And we don't know what it says, but he clearly does. And when Mirdania asks him, what did the carving say? He says, where is he? And we get a shot of him looking over the vastness of the forest past Eregion, and you get the sense that he can sort of sense that war's coming.
And funny enough, I'm going to also quote a thread from Wizardway Chris that says, just on that, I'd like to point out how hilarious it is that Adar would carve "Where is the man?" on a body in Sindarin Elvish, knowing he'd be tossed into a realm where most likely the single mortal man permitted, Halbrand. Like, he didn't even have to name him. The man was enough for the elves to get the memo, but Adar doesn't know about Sauron's new fair form. So they're looking for the man, Halbrand, but he's not there anymore.
So, just so I understand that, you're implying that translation isn't necessarily where is he, but where's the man?
Yeah, because he's looking for specifically Halbrand as Sauron. So he doesn't know that he's transformed into an elvish version.
Right.
So he's asking, where is the human man? No, not knowing that there is no human man there anymore.
Right. Yeah, I took it as Adar playing... I took it kind of like Bruce Willis in Die Hard leaving the message like, ho, 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 now I have a machine gun moment, where he's sort of letting it's like Adar letting Sauron know, I'm here.
Ho, ho.
Yeah.
Like that's how I kind of found that. Like
I
felt
that.
felt to me, but I don't know. Christy, do you have any thoughts on that scene?
I mean, not really. I didn't interpret it in the John McClane sort of way, but especially I think that it's meant to tie into the conversation that later he has with Galadriel, and sort of sets that up, and just that he's looking for Halbrand.
Like, why carve something into someone's chest? Like, I feel like you don't do that unless you want the body to be found.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Right. So there's purpose to that.
A definite flex. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
I know you're there.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
doesn't know what he looks like. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So to what purpose? I don't really know. But I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It was, but interesting, and interesting that it's also the title of the episode.
The way that he is using Mirdania is very interesting. To where, I have a feeling that, Celebrimbor is going to finish the rings, but I think he's going to try and hide it from Adar. And I wonder if we're going to get more with her in that she's going to help steal the rings. Because he is playing into this emotional side of her where she feels attached to Anatar. But of course he doesn't feel attached. He's just playing along.
Yeah.
And he knows he's going to use her somehow. Which is going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
See, like the hand hold, the come to me if you need anything, can I trust you? Playing into those emotions.
Right. You're right. He's not done with her yet.
Yeah. That's a good call.
Be important.
It's a good observation. And cut to Adar and Galadriel having a nice dinner together, hanging out, Did
anyone else shout at the TV, "Don't you dare eat a tomato"?
Oh, shit.
I was looking at the pretty gross looking food that was sitting on the table, but I didn't think of Denethor. But you're right.
Yeah. It is cringy. Yeah, going back to that scene. And it's a rather tense dinner. Sauron's kind of discussing. They're having a frank conversation. It's pretty interesting how they both open up here. Adar's talking about Sauron's influence and how it affected him, right? And he's like, he asked Galadriel, like, what did he offer you? And she was like, comes forthcoming, and she was like, an army. And Adar says is like, he promised me a family, and
Promised me the children, and that's literally what the orcs call him, or Uruks call him, is father.
Father, yeah. So pretty wild how they're both kind of admitting these things, I think, to each other, and coming to terms that Sauron is still here. I think they're both aware, and Adar even comes out and says Halbrand is Sauron. Mm-hmm. And Galadriel, I think, kind of confirms it. I don't think she verbally confirms it, but she's
got the whole demeanor changes, everything.
Her non-answer is sort of a confirmation, I feel.
Yeah. There's also something interesting too. I have such curiosity about Adar's glove that he's wearing.
Oh, okay.
Because it looks... Because there's kind of like two ways that it can go. It could be kind of a future nod to what the Witch King's gloves look like, or even Sauron's gloves when he gets the ring cut off, or it's a mix of both, and it's actually one of Morgoth's gloves. But it looks so incredibly similar to the Witch King in my eyes that I was like, that thing looks familiar. So I was like, I don't know if this is like lore-wise, if it's even possible, but like, what if Adar turns out to be the Witch King? You know, like something cool like that. I think that would be fascinating.
But wouldn't have to be a human, or no?
That's what I need to look into, is if he's actually supposed to be, because we know the name of one of the Nazgul, but we don't know who the Witch King is, so I'm not sure how that would work, but it's just like a cool, like, that would be cool if we could, even though it doesn't really line up. But there's definitely a nod there to what it's one glove, and it's like focused on.
Yeah.
Yeah, design similarity, if nothing else, for sure. Yeah.
Speaking of Morgoth, this is a fascinating moment. He brings out of a box, and he says, I have a plan, and he brings out Morgoth's crown and shows it to Galadriel, and she recognizes it right away as well. And his plan, Adar's plan, is if we combine the three rings of power, the three elven rings of power, with the Morgoth's crown, we could defeat Sauron. And he's like, this is the crown that I originally defeated Sauron with, which actually made me appreciate that moment, in the sense that there's two things here. And I have questions to you guys. I didn't realize his crown was imbued with any sort of power, right? But it does make sense as to why he was able to use it to kill Sauron in that opening scene of season 2, right? In the pre-scene, when he stabs him with it in his back. So I was sort of like, okay, Morgoth's crown has some sort of is imbued with some sort of power that it feels like it's a weapon that could kill something like Sauron. That's okay. That's interesting. But then, when he starts talking about using the three rings with the crown, is he talking about reforging the rings with the metal of the crown? Like, I don't really understand this, and
I think he means you guys have any thoughts using here. Like the three people who have the rings are serving under him with the crown, and he can influence them in that way. Because I don't think they would have the means or the knowledge on how to even combine them and create them, because only Celebrimbor knows how.
Right.
So it's almost like, with our powers combined. But that's interesting about Morgoth, because he's a Valar, isn't he?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So,
he was. He's like the fallen Valar. Yes. He was Melkor, and he became Morgoth. Yeah. This is interesting. It's interesting to see that there's this relic of the First Age, but from the darker side. There's not really a precedent for this in the lore.
Okay.
The crown itself, as far as I know, was said to be made of just iron. And if it were, its claim to fame would have been that it belonged to Morgoth, and B, he had the crown set with the three Silmarils after he stole them.
Oh,
and the three Silmarils are absolutely imbued with power, but also cursed, and so it kind of makes sense that way. a mortal or an impure, an evil person couldn't even touch the Silmarils without being in agonizing pain. So even though he stole them, he was in that pain, and he had them set into a crown. So they sort of sit above his head, and he can sort of show them off, like look what I did, but not actually have to touch them. So you could say that it's historical in that way. And then within the show, they've also sort of, just to kind of remind everyone that the whole reason that mithril is supposed to have a special significance in the show is because of this apocryphal story where the last Silmaril was in the heart of the mountain where the Balrog and the elf fought and the tree grew, and the power went into all the metal. So it kind of ties into the way that they've established the lore with mithril so far.
Okay.
Yeah, but not really. There's not so much that you could point to in the books and say, this is definitely what he's talking about right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I can understand, just so you think that maybe there's still some Silmaril embodiment in the crown, or like built into the crown, which would then give it power?
Or it's kind of just like so imbued with evil because of the creator, and kind of like the way that he used the crown, it probably could have some sort of like almost like leaking effect to where it becomes such a powerful artifact for evil because of what it did and what it once wore.
But I guess I'm still sort of confused. Like, if it does have power, why doesn't he wield it? Like, why doesn't he wear the crown and wield the power? Right? Like, it's unless it's like bullshit. Like he's bullshitting here. So I was kind of thinking, possible. Like, is he bullshitting like Galadriel here? Like, is that part of his plan? I was trying to wrap all this around my head.
Yeah, really. That's an interesting thought as to why he. Well, it sounds like he does want to do it, but I wonder if he's afraid of it because Sauron is still alive. Mm. So I wonder if he's like kind of like, I'd love to use it,
Sauron still controls the crown because
kind
he's still
of
alive.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because
he does wear it. Once he takes the form that we know him as, like, he does wear the crown, right?
Because that's what we see. There's a real possibility that this is just a setup for that he's setting up that this crown is Morgoth's crown, and it's powerful, and it makes it all the more significant when Sauron becomes the new Dark Lord.
Okay. Yeah.
So he had it refitted to fit him.
To fit him.
Is an interesting thing, because the Valar, when they're in
look at it.
Oh, that's so cool! Yeah.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah.
Because we could look into the details of it.
For our podcast listeners, Erica On is holding up a statue, a really big statue. That's like what? That's like a 16 inches or something.
Huge.
Yeah, huge statue of Sauron. I digress. So they kind of Adar and Galadriel kind of make a pact here. They're like, let's let's kind of pair up, and maybe we can defeat Sauron. And which I thought was kind of like, because in Galadriel, you get the sense this whole time too. I don't want to draw on this scene too much longer, but Chris, you brought up the point. She definitely still feels prejudiced to orcs, and she even calls Adar an orc.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and he gets mad about that.
Yeah, like it was almost like a slur, right? She said it almost like, because clearly he's not an orc. He's still, or is he? I don't really.
Technically speaking, he is, because he's one of the original 13 that was turned by Morgoth.
He's got that black blood.
Yeah, he's got the black blood.
Yeah. Okay.
So he is one. He's just not as. He's just
very
prettier.
early one.
Right. Yeah. Because he still looks very elvish,
yes,
from the look of him. Right. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
The hottest orc I've ever seen.
Yeah. Woo. Steamy.
I mean, the way that Galadriel caught him, and he just like looks up at her, like.
Come on, hotter than the Jed Brophy orc. I'm just kidding.
Or the one with the sponge face.
Right. Am I missing anything here at this scene that you guys caught?
What I was going to say earlier is it's funny to me, really, that he comments that he had the crown resized to fit him, because in human shape the Valar are of great stature, But then when we see Sauron later and he's in this shape, he also is of great stature, so he's going to have to refit it again.
I said it one more time.
Yeah.
We're back in Númenor. We cut to Elendil and his trial by Pharazôn. And it's not really a trial. It's more like, hey, you've been sentenced. and normally for all the bad things you did, which he did none of really, you would be sentenced to death because of treason and inciting this and killing that. But he's like, but because of your service, and you get the sense that they kind of cut to his daughter a few times. You get the sense that he's kind of doing this because, he doesn't want to probably piss off every faithful in Númenor. But
everybody still calls him captain.
Yeah, but also I feel like there's like his daughter's like standing right next to him.
Yeah,
right next to Pharazôn. So you have to wonder that there was a little bit of like, come on, like
Pharazôn is
Pharazôn. I keep calling him Pharazôn, don't I?
I know, that's
it's
why I'm
fine.
laughing.
Yeah.
We call him that too now because of you.
Because of me. Yeah.
It's funny.
That's incredible.
Pharazôn. He sounds like a transformer when I call him Pharazôn.
He kind of does.
Sorry, roll this over, Pharazôn.
Totally. It's like Starscream.
I'm gonna cry. It's so funny.
He's definitely a Decepticon.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we find out later he's a hypocrite, so it works. But he is such a dick. Like you can tell when somebody's just a little bit evil because their eyebrows upturn like that.
Yeah, totally.
And so I just was like, look at those eyebrows on that that bitch.
Freshly waxed.
I hated him. Yeah. I hated him.
Did you guys get the sense though that there's a little bit more going on here than what's being said, especially with him? He shoots a dirty look at what's his shit ass son's name?
Kemen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't you get the sense that he would rather that Kemen maybe didn't go about this the way that he went? That it went down.
Absolutely, because it caused a huge ruckus, and now all of this is happening, where he's got to basically condemn the one guy that like everybody likes. Besides,
but he doesn't have to condemn him. He's forced. His hand is forced.
His hand is forced into it.
Just accept me as ruler, which would have. That's really that. Don't you think it would have been a better ploy for him to try to win Elendil over on his own merits and get all the faithful to him? And he's a little irritated that he even has to be in this position to make Elendil make that choice.
Right.
Yes, I think he's too caught up in power to even think about going that way. And I think he's so caught up in it and already kind of hates the faithful because of all of the elvish and all of, all of that connection, that he would probably just rather it disappear instead of them coming onto his side because he's so actively against it. There's very clearly a difference between the faithful and non-faithful. And the faithful are very much disliked, and I don't think he even cares about them enough to want them on his side.
Certainly supports that,
And I think the first season did a better job with Pharazôn in the sense that he was painted more like a gray character, in the sense that you got the sense that he's kind of had his own motives, but he would never really do anything like overly like
he wouldn't
crazy.
do what Kemen did.
Yeah. Yeah, like he still felt like a decent guy in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like he kind of came across as like against, like politically against a lot of the things, but never would resort to like an outright treasonal, like, or killing anybody, or like just, or putting anybody to death by any means. You know what I'm saying? Like any of that.
Book / possibly television spoilers, but much further down the road. And of course, having foreknowledge, when I see this, even in season 1, I kind of know that he is capable of those things, but not really until he's more directly under the influence of Sauron.
Okay.
But even despite all the evil things that he really, because the worst is yet to come from this guy.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. No, by for sure. Yeah. He gets way worse. But even despite all those things, it's said that later in the Third Age, when the Dunedain, like Aragorn and his chieftains, they still remember proudly when Pharazôn came to Middle Earth and showed such a show of force that Sauron surrendered, and his forces fled.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess my point here is that yeah, he's even in the lore, in the history, when this becomes history, he's not remembered as only an evil character.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like this season kind of does his character a bit of disservice. Like there are slight nods, like that nod to him and Kimmin, like him slapping his son down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like they were sort of painted him as a very one-note villainous character this season versus the first season. I feel like they put a little bit more meat on that bone for him, like to not completely be a bad guy. Like he definitely comes across as someone who's just not doing anything good.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I mean, he does need to usurp in the story. He needs that. So we got to see.
They're
how
kind
that
of
goes
just
down.
speeding it up a little bit. There was
Okay.
a
It
quote
could be
from
worse.
just
He
like
forces Muriel to marry him in
that
the
is
lore.
true.
Yeah, and that's his cousin.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
There was a quote on social media that I saw a while ago, not even related to this, but it was like, is for saying like, power doesn't change you, it just reveals who you really are. And I thought that like lines up perfectly with him, because now he's got this power. Now what he really is in that gray area turns into what he really is, and is power hungry and just seems all around angry.
He does seem angry a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elendil refuses to bend the knee, and they sentence him to be judged by the sea monster of Númenor, basically.
Yeah.
I forget. There's like they call it something like trial.
The sea worm.
Yeah, the sea worm. And it kind of we cut there, and we that's where we kind of leave it. We'll get to the trial a little bit, which is pretty awesome. Now we're back we're back to the stranger and Tom Bombadil. We're back in
Oh yeah, I've got
in
stuff
the
about
east,
this.
as they say. This is all kind of wonky for me. So the stranger and Tom are kind of having a conversation. Tom's saying, Tom Bombadil is basically saying like you need to be able to harness your power, and you've yet to figure out how. Right? Like you failed in all of and so far in every like way possible. And if you continue to fail against this next challenge, against this dark wizard, then the consequences are dire. So he's basically saying like, I'll help you, but you got to listen to me in a way, right? This is a bit of
This is arbitrarily your last chance.
Yeah, exactly. And meanwhile, he's having we get a glimpse of his visions, and he's getting some visions of Poppy and Nori in danger. Like they're not doing well.
Han and Leia.
And I find it interesting that Tom keeps pushing him to, and Chris, and I need your help here. Like this, like you need to follow the secret fire, or wielder. Like he wants to master the secret fire.
This is what I want to talk about too.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I'll do
and
the
I'm
surface level, and you can deep dive it.
Yeah. So just so I'm clear, like he says, I want to master the secret fire, and Tom's like, well, you shouldn't be the master of anything. But he's like, well, how can I wield it if I don't master it?
Yes.
So what is the secret fire? Why do I? Because this is also something I remember from Gandalf days, right?
Yep.
That's what I was going to
I'm
say.
servant of
Do you
the
remember
secret
having
fire.
heard this before?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly where we heard it before.
Okay.
And as soon as he said that, I just went, "Oh, yep, he's Gandalf."
Here we go again. Here we go again.
That's where we go again. But yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, and that was
At this point,
Chris,
if he's not, what is this all
take it
about? You know?
away.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris, this is all you.
Okay,
That's
so
my
this-
point too.
Okay, so the secret
sorry to
fire.
steal your thunder.
No, it's okay. I'm actually very impressed.
Yeah, that I remember that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you remember? You remember where you heard it specifically in the?
Yeah. So he's
The
fighting.
Balrog.
So in Lord of the Rings, he's fighting the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm in Moria, and he's like chanting. It seems like he's got his staff and his sword, and he's sort of like go back to the dark, go back to where you can see came. I'm the serpent of the secret fire, and he blocks the whip with like a shield and a fire.
Right.
You know, like it's
Exactly.
all that. So
he does say that he's the wielder of something too, the wielder of the flame of Anor.
Oh, yeah.
So
Honor.
yeah. So Honor is the sun. So he is both a servant and a wielder of some sort of fire. So the secret fire in the Silmarillion, in the music of the Ainur, it is said that it's just a song, and God, basically, we're going to get a little theological here because that's how Tolkien wrote these. He was so God basically let the Ainur have visions and see the music would look like, and then it's said that when he let it be, he created the world and put the secret fire to burn in the middle of it, and called it Ea, which just means being. So if you can look at it that way and say that in some way the secret fire is that sacred ability to create. It is and specifically to create life. It is that thing that God and only God has, that he puts into things that are going to have thoughts and will and being of their own. That's the secret fire. So it's kind of like a servant of God, a servant of life. It's the thing that Morgoth, it's the same person really. It's the thing that Morgoth doesn't have to use to create orcs, which is why he had to corrupt elves. Which is significant too, because it ties back into what we've seen with the orc problem. They do have the secret fire in them, because they're not just puppets. He doesn't just have to, he doesn't have to think about.
Oh, interesting. So he technically
to animate them.
He technically can wield the secret fire then, if he created a being that can harness or has the secret fire in them, or do you think that's just because of, I don't know.
Well, it's a good question. It's significant. He meaning in this case Morgoth, is not wielding the secret fire. What he's doing is he's perverting the secret fire. He's corrupting and dominating and subjugating the wills of other beings, but these beings nonetheless do possess those wills unto themselves, and that can only come from the secret fire. Remember the legend of the dwarves that we talked about when Aule created the dwarves. This was before the firstborn, which were the elves, had come into being. He was eager to see the firstborn come and kind of wanted to help it along. So he creates dwarves like out of stone and sculpts them, and he teaches them to talk and makes a language for them and animates them. But they can only speak and think and move while he's thinking about them like puppets. But then God comes and sees what he's done, and seeing that he did this not out of pride or the will to dominate these dwarves, but out of anticipation and love to see creatures come about, he says, I'll let them actually be. And he puts the secret fire into the dwarves, and gives them will, because only he can do that. So we think about these things are all interconnected, and I think that what's happening here with Gandalf and Bombadil is Bombadil is trying to get him to reframe.
I like how we're calling him Gandalf, just like succumbing to that fact now.
Should we call him the strange? I mean,
I just love that we're just like we get it now.
Yeah. No, I gave up a long time ago. Gandalf he's trying to get Gandalf to reframe the way that he thinks about wielding a power, to look at it in a different light and see it as serving a power, which is very much in line with the lore and what his role is. We talked about this before too, that he is supposed to be a humble servant to inspire and help other people out, and he just maybe isn't thinking of it that way.
Well, the stranger kind of starts with like, I need to go help them. Why can I just come back and do this later once I know they're safe? And Tom says something.
Them meaning Nori and Poppy. He wants to go save them.
Nori and Poppy. He wants to go save them. And Bombadil says that many that die deserve life. And I was like, that sounds really familiar.
Sounds familiar, right?
And that's because it is from the Fellowship. It's right before Gandalf dies. They're kind of just like Gandalf is talking to Frodo as they're kind of like taking a rest in Khazad-dûm, and Frodo is talking about basically Gollum, and that he's like, why didn't he just kill him? Like, it would have been a mercy. And Gandalf almost directly quotes him and says, "Many that die deserve life, and some that, and kind of like vice versa." And
Yeah, some that live deserve to die.
yeah, and I was like, well, there's even more solid evidence as Gandalf if he's almost like directly quoting him from like two separate things.
Yeah. Secret Fire and that quote. Yeah.
You guys are converting me. I'm starting to believe he's Gandalf.
I'm starting to convert myself.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah. I'm with you guys now. Like, I remember the first episode where we were like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not really convinced. Now I'm gonna be mad if it's not Gandalf, right? Like, you get to that point where like, if it's not Gandalf, now you've just done a lot of like
nods to just throwing all of that away.
To like, now it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So
I'm irritated either way, honestly, because all of these nods is like the Secret Fire thing. Sure, that's subtle enough, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But the things like, let's look for a Gand, and maybe he's some kind of Grandalf, and especially, I think I've mentioned this too. I think the Hobbit movies are super guilty of this. This direct, absolute quote from Gandalf that he gets that quote from Bombadil, but it's like this: remember the movie that you loved, you know? Please love this in the same way. Those moments,
a little cringy.
It's really, I hated that in the Hobbit films, and I don't know. Maybe that's just become like a cinematic tradition with Lord of the Rings things now that you're going to do this. I hope not.
To do something that Chris will hate. Yeah.
I loved the Hobbit movies for what they were, but they were kind of oddly heavy-handed. But I'm curious too, just because we're thinking about it, the staff that we see Gandalf use in the trilogy is not his original one. He gets it from Radagast the Brown as like a replacement, I think, for fighting the
in those movies. Yeah.
At least just in the movies. Yeah. Oh, so that makes me wonder. Yeah, not actual lore, but that makes me wonder. And I will be furious if he finds a staff and it looks like the one from the trilogy, and I'm like, well, you just retconned your own Hobbit movie if it's exactly the same staff.
I'll be fine. I'll be pissed. If it's the same staff from
I'll get it, but at the same time, I'm going to be mad.
Yeah. Are you? Let me be clear here. Are you going to be mad if it's the first staff from the Hobbit, or if it looks just like the one from the Fellowship? If it looks just
like the one from the Fellowship.
I think I would prefer that, because I just pretend that whole thing didn't happen in the Hobbit.
That whole scene.
I made my own edit of the Hobbit. I've not even watched the extendeds. I took all the extendeds and edited them all down as if it was like if there was one Hobbit theatrical release movie,
and then like a 2-hour Hobbit,
and then then the DVD came out and it's the extended edition. I want my movie to be that, and I edited that all together, and that's the only one I watched. And
I want to.
Did you really? That's amazing.
Yeah, well, we can make that happen.
I would love to see that.
Hit me up after this,
Yeah,
I'd love to see that.
I'm sending an email
Chris is
right
his own
now.
bootleg Hobbit edit. I love it. We got to get that out to the world.
Yeah.
It's private.
It's private.
You guys can watch it.
This felt like Yoda telling Luke, and Luke's having visions of his. Like Han and Han.
It is exactly like that.
And it's like
on the bodega system.
Yeah, and so, but what's interesting here though is Yoda's not like saying like, Yoda basically says if you leave your training, bad things will happen. Like you won't be able to face Vader like you won't be able to defeat him. It's basically what he's saying. Not like you can't ever come back here and train again.
Yeah,
like there wasn't. Yeah. But this feels like Bombadil's like, listen, if you go save Nori and Poppy, I'm gone.
Nope. Like last chance. Yeah.
Last chance. Like, and I feel like that's kind of like a weird.
It is weird. It is.
I feel like Bombadil is just straight up bored. He's like, look, if you leave and come back, I'm going to forget who you are, and I'm going to forget what we were doing. So you got to do this now, or I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as an audience member, I'm confused. I was like, but you're leaving it open for him to choose to go save people, which is probably the right thing to do. Right. But now he can't choose the right thing to do.
It's a temporary fix.
What?
It's a temporary fix because he's like, he's like, okay, well, if you go and do this thing, he probably has some foresight too as to like, if you go and do this now, you're probably going to die or get all of these other like halflings killed. So if you stay here and you train and you get your staff and you can wield your abilities, then you can actually save them.
But then say that. I feel like he's been put in a situation where he has...
That's exactly how Tom is. That's how Bombadil is. He's just so like...
It's strange. Like, it's like, you gotta let your friends die, but listen, you might be a cool wizard one day. You know, like, I'm like, it seems weird.
You have a brighter future. These ones that die, it means nothing compared to the lives that are gonna be saved.
Right, yeah. And I'm like,
I don't know. It's weird.
It is weird. I'm trying so hard to justify it.
I appreciate it.
I think that to be charitable, we've departed quite a bit from the character of Tom Bombadil in the books, which is fine, and I still want to give props.
It's
to
a
the
good
actor
TV show adaptation.
I loved to see the character, and I think he plays it really well. But in the TV show, he's been given a role of a guide for Gandalf, and he is very much. They're leaning into a godly type of servant that's showing Gandalf a path that he needs to walk and keeping him on the path, because ultimately all the things that Gandalf wants to do, including saving his friends, are going to be better served by him staying on the path, at least for now. But yeah, that's a charitable way to look at it. Granted, it's weird.
Yeah.
He's using this quote, which you mentioned that about mercy, that the whole thing about don't deal out death and judgment. Really, the point of that was don't kill the people that you're pissed off at, because they might still have some role to play. Which actually goes back to the whole orc thing that we're talking about. You know,
yeah.
But now it's sort of flip flopped, and it's like, don't be so quick to use your power of life and death to save people's lives. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what he's saying? Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
It's a little. I'll be honest, I didn't like this scene at all. And then Bombadil just straight up disappears like a fucking
magic trick. I thought that was hilarious.
Poof.
That was my
I chuckled,
part.
but I was like, am I supposed to laugh at that? Like it kind of felt like it was like he was like, I expect him to turn around and be like, I'm Batman now. Like you know, like it just felt like
his voice to echo out of the sky.
Like
don't turn from
choose the one on the left over there. You know, like I don't. And then it was like whole scene kind of felt like it was played for comedy, but there's then supposed to be this serious choice being made, because it's like
it's
I'm supposed to choose from all these trees, and he's like,
there's
the
so
secret
many
fire
trees.
The secret fire stuff, the idea that you're on the path, that kind of thing. I love it.
Ooh.
But the other stuff. And you know what? Let me talk about something else. I'm normally not this person to talk about like costumes or to talk about the mise en scène and stuff. But two things in this scene.
I think I know what you're gonna say.
I love he puts his blue jacket on. Right? Now he looks like Tom Bombadil. He puts on the hat. He's got his yellow boots, bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow. Tom Bombadil, what a merry fellow.
That was so good.
Love that. Also, did you notice, and I asked, did you notice as if it's real? I also want you to confirm that, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? They're doing a little forced perspective on Tom and making him a smaller person than Gandalf. Not as small as if he was a hobbit, but nonetheless, they're sitting there. They're matching the eye line in the chairs, but he's a little bit of a smaller person, which is accurate. He's not much bigger than a hobbit, it's described. Did you guys see this?
I did, and I'm really glad you brought it up, because I haven't been able to fully rewatch. I just mostly did like parts and bits, but I did see that. I was just kind of like, oh, he is a lot shorter, and that just kind of like made me happy.
Well, and that's, I mean, and I don't know if you guys have anything else to add, but that's the end of the Stranger and Bombadil story for this episode.
Yeah.
We cut to Nori in the store village, Nori and Poppy, and Nori and Gundabel, however you want to pronounce it, talk.
The Gund.
The Gundabel.
The Gund. Don't call her the Gunda.
Oh yeah. Well, the Gund is the group of. Don't call her the. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
One of the rules. There's they have like a nice conversation about like, you know, what is home, right? And the Gundabels kind of talks a little bit about like we carved these holes like centuries ago. And Nori's saying like, hey, we never find a home. We move every month.
Yeah. Interesting that she doesn't say holes. She says smeals.
It's Smeals.
Smeals, yeah, which is a word that is used for hobbit holes later on. In Tookborough, yeah, the there's a dwelling in Tookborough that's like a mass hobbit hole, or it's like in the same hill where the whole family lives, and it's there's one like that in Buckland too, but the one in Tookborough specifically is called Great Smeals.
Oh my gosh, I didn't
Wow.
even. Oh, I didn't even. That's
cool.
a really good one.
And then it cuts to Poppy and Nobody, aka Miramac, and they're having their doughy eye for each other, man. And we get we get some love action on this show.
It's what you've been looking for this whole time, Drew.
It's not what the characters I care about. I'm like, okay, thanks, Hobbit. Hobbit love.
Yeah, well, did anybody else expect that snake to bite him?
Yes. I was so glad you said that. I was the whole time thinking like they're sitting there and like looks like they have little darts and they're putting snake venom on the darts.
Yeah.
And they're being so careless with this snake. They're just like leaning over and if you think the snake goes off camera,
like,
and I'm like
directly by his leg.
Yeah, it's gonna bite his little nobody leg, or
I expected him to go, oh, ow, as like they were kissing, not this weird. Like, did you have lizard for dinner? Like.
Yeah, and then the stranger's going to come out like a G.I. Joe PSA. Yeah.
That would have been amazing. Oh, fuck. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
you should never have lizard kisses when you're venom snake.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, Obi-Wan.
Thanks, now we know.
Yeah. And I'm like, haven't these guys known each other for like 2 days?
Straight up 2 days. They've never felt love before.
I've lizard kissed people sooner than that.
Oh,
God.
Yeah,
I guess so, yeah. That's true. But it's usually after a lot of drinking.
Okay, yeah, same. I guess if we're really going there, I get that. But not even going to know.
Yeah, it covers up the lizard.
Yeah. I don't know. This goes back to, like, this episode. I'm like, listen, I mean, I liked some of the scenes in this episode. This whole Hobbit scene could have just been cut on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I was just kind of like we could have replaced that with a scene with like Isildur in the beginning.
Yeah,
like it could have been replaced.
This whole thing provided zero new information.
I wonder if they're building up this romance simply to
like tear him away. What's that? Sorry, I cut you
kill
off.
Poppy.
Oh shit! I don't. You think so?
No, that is a thing that they do. Yeah, let's yeah.
Get this
make somebody really care about her in a romantic way, so that you feel extra bad, and the character feels extra bad when she dies.
One of them are gonna die.
I think it's gonna be Miramac, but yeah, I don't think they'll kill Poppy.
But, I don't know.
I mean, if you were a filmmaker and you wanted the audience to feel really bad about one of them dying, which one would you kill?
It's gonna be Poppy.
That's true. I would kill Poppy.
That's who I don't want to die. Yeah.
That feels so bad saying it. Poppy would be the one.
Yeah.
Poppy would be the one because I care more about Poppy than I do nobody.
That's true.
Exactly,
Out of most people in this show, I think you could probably lose Poppy. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You could, probably lose a few more strange elf, like random elf people.
Yeah,
but,
like Handman.
Handman and
I would care about, at this point, I would care about Handman because he means something to us.
He means a lot to us. To us now.
Totally.
Here, the heart.
He might lose a hand.
He might. Then he will get a singular Handman.
Exactly, yeah.
That's happened.
To live up to his name.
Man, it's happening. You've got Mithros with one hand. You've got Baron with one hand. It's
true.
Silmarillion stuff here.
There's something in fiction with people losing a hand. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So who's going to lose a hand in this series?
Somebody. Clearly, Handman. His name has meaning, as you say all the time in Tolkien. Foreshadowing. And that's it for the Nori and all the stuff in the east. The stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't really need any of this stuff, but here we are. We're back in.
I'm going to just defend the scene just real briefly here, and you can cut it if you like. But I think that one significant thing to this scene is that there's the whole nomads versus stay-at-home hobbits, and we know that later all the hobbits become stay-at-home. So this scene with the conversation between Goon and Nori, where she talks about what home means. Nomadic versus living in the hole, it might be a setup for us seeing the hobbits come together in some way and start living in.
Yeah,
That's true.
like,
That
in a way
scene
that we know
was
later.
important. I agree.
it has to be. Otherwise, like, it has to be set up. To your point, Chris, it has to be set up for them to be pushed out of their home forcefully, right? Like, something's going to happen where they are like, we have to leave because X happened. Therefore, and then Nori's going to be like, I know the way. Follow me.
I know the way.
This
is the way.
No, that's a good point. So we leave Nori and the stranger, and now we're back in with Anatar, and he's meeting with King Durin. But right before that, King Durin is getting a shitload of jewels and gold delivered to him by wheelbarrowfuls of gold at his feet. I'm assuming are coming from the other dwarven kingdoms. It's not.
I'm assuming these are him taxing his own people, like we saw in the previous one.
Yeah,
could be. Yeah,
a little bit of both, for sure.
Anatar arrives and tries to convince King Durin and Prince Durin to give him more mithril.
I think it's important what he says here about how that Eregion is in danger of war, and they need weapons and armor of mithril, and because you go on with like what actually happens here, and I'll come back to that.
Yeah,
but, I think that's what he says, and I think that it's important.
No, I think that is important. So, because Durin eventually says no to Anatar,
which shocked me.
Yeah,
me too. Yeah.
And even shocked his son. The son was like, "Don't. Maybe we should take this offline, buddy. Like, you don't have to answer now. Let's go talk."
Yeah.
And the king is like, "Nope, I know my answer," and the answer's no. And you see Anatar kind of like, there's a moment where he's like not sure what to do, and he kind of sees like a glimpse. I think I caught this.
Yes.
I should have rewound it, but in a flame. Next to him, he sees a glimpse of a Balrog.
Yes, so indeed.
I didn't catch it, but based on what you said, I went back and it's definitely there, absolutely there.
Yeah,
don't know how I didn't catch it.
He knows it's there too.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, he's set himself up in this win-win situation. Whether or not King Durin says yes or no, he wins, because when he says no, his reasoning later to Prince Durin is that if war is coming to Middle Earth, then everybody's going to want these weapons. So if we stockpile them, we can sell them for whatever we want. We can name our price. So he's still just as greedy. But now Sauron wins because he is through encouraging them to create this hoard, it encourages them to mine ever deeper, ever more greedy for mithril, and thus wake up the Balrog.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's going to win.
But I found it interesting, though, that Anatar, I find it interesting. He leaves empty-handed in this scene. You don't see him get any mithril, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you don't know yet. Yeah,
which
we don't
confuses
know yet. Right.
me here in a few minutes.
And he kind of leaves willingly, and I thought he would fight harder for it because he is the one pushing for. We know as the audience know that he wants these rings of power because of we know why, right? So it seemed like he would fight. He would have fought harder to get it, or have done something here to made a different deal outside of an elvish one, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He clearly doesn't think he needs his permission, anyways.
Yes,
and he's seeding that because to your point that you made too. Earlier, the greed, digging farther down, doing all these things, he's planting that seed for them to go and do that because of the Balrog. He's not going to fight them on it because coming up in a few minutes, we don't know how exactly he gets mithril, but he clearly doesn't need to talk to the king for it and can just get it.
Yeah. Well, he needs audience has sticky fingers.
Yeah, and so
but he can grab a small amount, sure.
Yeah, so he's seeding the process of digging further down so he doesn't need to fight for it.
That's a bigger thing. And we've seen him do this so often where he says one thing with one sort of emotion and then he turns around to the camera where the other characters can't see and he has a slight little smirk.
Oh, they're so subtle.
He is owning this character.
Really
every
is.
scene that Sauron is in, it's great.
It's really good.
Even though you don't know at this point, I think I've seen enough to just think, well, this is not what it looks like on the surface. This is not the whole story. There's something else going on here. He's going to get his way.
Yeah. And we do find out a little later he does. But right before we cut back to Eregion, we see an extra scene here after Anatar leaves of Prince Durin begging his father to take off the ring.
Oh, this was good.
And he says, the ring, you don't control the ring controls you. And he's like, prove it by taking it off.
Mm-hmm.
There's a long pause. You actually get a sense that his dad the king might do it, but he says, nope.
Yeah. It's mine. It belongs to me.
Yeah.
And I really liked seeing that push and pull of the ring, because we've seen it affect, mostly in this way, Bilbo and Smeagol. We've seen those two get influenced the most on screen. And being able to see almost those exact same things and seeing how it affects every single person who wears a ring of power becomes so enamored with it, and it becomes part of them. And I need to go back, because I made a comment last night where I was like, take a shot every time someone says precious in this episode, because I'm pretty sure it was at least 4 times. And I felt it was a little too much, but I did appreciate it, because he says it to Celebrimbor later. But they talk about, like, it is a precious thing, precious metals, precious ring. And it's nice seeing basically a full circle of how the rings affect people from beginning to end. And I like that. I like seeing the corruption.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. And we see a new power of the ring. So his son runs up to tear it off of him.
Gets bitch slapped.
And Durin sort of just gently sort of pushes him away, but it launches.
Look, those prosthetics.
Prince Durin, like 20 feet away from him. Which, again, I don't have a problem with. It's like, obviously it's a ring and has power. I guess I'm interested to... these are problems I have in fantasy and sci-fi show. I like when I have a set understanding of what something can do. Right. So, and that's fine that it introduced a thing, because the ring's new to everyone. Right. Like, so I guess I just want to know, like, at some point, I don't want it to just become like a ring that can just be like, oh, by the way, it does this too. And by the way, it can do this, and it can make a cake. And you want a hamburger? Sure.
Oh, now I want cake.
Like, I just don't want it to become like a thing that all of a sudden it can do like a bunch of different things. So I'm fine that it can have like this, give them extra strength or like a force push kind of vibe, but
yeah, because we've kind of talked about that it enhances their abilities already, and dwarves are very strong. So it's not far-fetched to think that it could happen. But I see thoughts going behind Chris's eyes.
I'm intently listening there, but I honestly, I actually don't have a lot to offer here, because all that's ever said about the dwarven rings is that it tends to make them, as far as the negative effects, make them more greedy, which we have seen. Yeah. I think another thing is when Thror gives it to Thrain, and this is Thorin from The Hobbit. This is his grandfather and father, by the way.
That's true.
He says, this may help you rebuild your kingdom, but it needs gold to breed gold. So I don't know exactly what that means. It means if you it's sort of like you have to spend money to make money, but even if you have money, you can still get into bad business deals or whatnot. Once you have something with the power of this ring, you'll be able to grow riches, something along that.
I got you. Yeah.
So any of these like super strength powers, this is introduced by the show.
Okay. Yeah.
So we don't know. I mean, it's fine. Whatever.
Again,
there's not a lot explained about the rings really anyways, a whole ton. So it's nice being able to see a little bit more, but I completely understand that I need rules. I need it to be able to follow a certain criteria.
Right.
So it's rooted in that kind of like reality, even though it's fantasy, it needs structure.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so now when I see someone else with a ring and he's fighting someone, and if they're not able to punch that person,
they don't force push.
Yeah, like I'm going to be mad, right? Yeah. I'm going to be like, oh, you could have done the thing with the thing. And I'm like, so I just want to make sure we're not, basically riding ourselves into a corner here.
Yeah, basically in my eyes, it's the ring is customized to the person wearing it. So it's going to appear differently depending on the wearer. So that's kind of how I look at it, is it just depends on who's wearing it, because I'm going off the logic of the one ring, because whoever possesses the one ring, their natural abilities get enhanced as well, hence why, Bilbo and Frodo turn invisible when they wear it because they can disappear when they intend to. So I'm kind of going off of that logic. And we've seen it already, and we've talked about it already with like Galadriel's ring and the interesting healing thing that happened and the foresight. We've seen all of that enhanced already.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm going with, is everybody's got their own thing.
Okay. Yeah,
and it's just slowly getting revealed.
I just hope they put a pin in it somewhere, like give us a little bit of like purpose or reasoning behind it, because going back to the healing thing, that hasn't been explained. So now can Durin's ring heal people? Like you see what I'm getting at? Like it just opens up a lot of questions that I feel like they're going to eventually have to explain.
I'm with you there, and I feel the same way when it comes to what are the rules, that sort of thing. I'm especially this way like with the vampire stories, because I need to know like how do you kill them? What can they do? But with this one though, I think I'm a little bit more fuzzy, a little bit more forgiving. I approaching it from the books, I'm thinking, okay, well, the most important thing is that the dwarf rings don't really ever work the way that Sauron wants them to.
Sure.
That's one thing that we take from the books. The other thing that it makes them greedy. So we're showing that, and everything else is a vehicle to tell a story. So if it serves your story to show a powerful punch from father to son, because that's really what's going on here in this scene, that's fine if you don't see it again. I'm a little more forgiving as far as that goes. If they were to turn around and show that he becomes absolutely corrupt and under Sauron's thumb, that's going to be I don't know. I'll probably be the only person that cares, because then I'm just irritated that it's not following the established lore in the book.
Sure. Well, let's just keep in Khazad-dûm. We'll finish up this story for this episode. So Prince Durin goes back to his home, and Disa's there.
These two have my heart.
Right? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they're doing good work, and he basically says the king, he's like, here's what's going on. He's gonna dig deeper and deeper, and
he's not your father anymore. I can still see it in his eyes, that. The emotion that the actor, his name is not coming to me at the moment, but the way that he portrays that emotion there and just starts crying because of two things. One, that's incredibly powerful acting, because I could feel that. And two, I hope it didn't mess up his prosthetics too much from crying. Because we all know from Gimli, that shit's annoying. So I hope his skin was okay after that incredible performance.
Yeah. The prince is played by Owain Arthur.
That's who it is. Yes, thank you.
It's a great scene, and he's almost a little angry because Disa's sort of like, we got to stop him, right? Like we could do this thing, we could get people to rally behind it, and she has a plan to sort of like let him falter, to humiliate him, and he doesn't want that. Like, he's really sad that it's come to that. He basically says they're going to dig, and he's like, well, we have to stop them. And so they cut to a scene where we see Disa standing next to a cave wall, and the miners are coming in. The dwarven miners are coming in with
Narvi.
Yeah, with Narvi,
my boy.
And Narvi's there with his axe guys, and he's like, "All right, you got to get out of the way, or I'll move you out of the way." And she does a little song, and they all start laughing. And it's like, "Oh, you think that's gonna stop us?" And she's like, "No, but these guys will." And a shit ton of bats. I'm assuming they're bats. I don't know what they are in Lord of the Rings world.
Bats.
Yeah.
Come and chase all the dwarves away. Nice. And Prince Durin comes out and says, like, nice job. Like, we got work to do.
We got to talk about that a little bit more, because that clear up and down checking out Disa was the cutest thing ever. It's just like, I love you. And she's like, there's time to love me later. Yeah. And I was like, these two are just so precious. And I just said precious shit.
You said it.
You said it.
I said it this time.
That's a great moment. Yeah,
he's impressed. Clear.
Yeah.
I love that.
And that's basically the end of that storyline for this episode. You guys have anything else you want to bring up?
Don't think so.
So let's for the next like few pieces, I'm just going to start to clump together. I know this episode jumped around a lot as we discussed earlier in the beginning, so I'm just going to clump the storylines together so we can kind of like talk about them rather than keep jumping around. So all right, let's finish out Elendil's story with Earion and Miriel. So Elendil's in prison, and his daughter Earion is there to trying to convince him to bend the knee to Pharazôn. But he's saying, listen, like if you don't have your principles, you don't have anything. And she sort of is like not happy about it.
She's manipulating him with her emotions to get him to do what she wants. Yeah, probably because she doesn't want him to die.
Yeah.
Sure. But also it's an embarrassment for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This was an interesting scene because you kind of want to hate her, but at the same time you kind of understand. She doesn't want to. Like she's not happy about it. She's like, I lost my brother. I don't want to lose you. Mm-hmm. And you get the sense that that's heartfelt. So I didn't mind this scene. I thought this was. I'm glad they had it. If they didn't, I think it would have been foolish. And then Miriel is Elendil's love. The queen arrives. And intervenes, and everyone's like, you shouldn't be down here. She's like, I will do what I please, basically.
Even if I can't see, I will do what I want.
Yeah. And even, I thought there was a nice touch where even Ariel helps her in. Like, she actually takes her hand and helps her. Like, there's a moment here where I felt like she would have just, like, been, like, walk by her, like, I don't like you. Like, you're the reason.
Animosity I expected.
Yeah. It's almost like there's something changed in her to... Maybe. I don't know. This whole sequence of events maybe has warmed her up to not being such a bitch.
I can spell.
Yeah. Sorry. You're not a 3-year-old? Come on.
I'm 31.
Dad here. So I start to spell bad words now. Muriel's trying to convince him not to, to do the same thing, to bend the knee. And it's like you don't deserve to die. And he's like, I'm gonna put myself out there. If the gods say that I should die, and she respects that.
Normally, I find those types of conversations irritating where it's like, just save yourself, like, get over it. But the way that Elendil explained all of it made me just go, I can't be mad about this, because that makes a lot of sense. So the writers did really well with his lines, explaining it's not about pride, it's about faith. It's kind of like the showing, if I do what you want me to, then it shows all these other people that this faith isn't worth it. And so I need to hold up to my own standards, despite it being potentially the wrong thing to do.
I have a hard time. I'm with you guys. I have a hard time kind of relating, because like if someone's like, you'll die unless you've been up in the knee. Here we go. All right.
It's like, sure, I'll live.
Yeah. I'm like, maybe I'm weak-willed, but yeah. So props to Elendil for standing up for what he believes in.
Yeah.
And we see the trial by the sea, trial by abyss. And so they march him down to this little like little pool like by the ocean. Yeah. Right before the trial begins, Muriel shows up and he's like, I volunteer as tribute. And so she's like, take me instead, since his actions were based upon my...
For my sake, that she invokes the ancient law to say that I have the right to do it instead of him. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of page shuffling. Can that be a thing? Yeah, that can be a thing. It's real. Are you sure that's real? And Pharazôn's quick to be like, okay, cool. Let her go on mission and die. Like,
she's going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. He's pretty like, yes. There's a moment I feel like he's like, this maybe worked out better than I thought it would.
And I love her acting too when she goes onto the steps, because the way that she like evoked the kind of like, it's almost like when you're about to skip a step on a stair. She kind of had that feeling every time she stepped down a step. And I really felt that she was not able to see, because it's almost like a little scary when you finally hit that next step's ground.
Yeah.
So her acting is phenomenal.
That's cool. That's a nice touch. I didn't notice that. She enters the tide pool, and I guess we see them earlier in the episode, I guess summoning the beast with horns. I didn't know that's a thing. So I guess this is something I don't know if they do this often in in
I'm not sure
Númenor
either.
or but I guess they can control this beast and just so everybody understands, this is the same beast and tell me I'm wrong. This is the same
From the
beast
first
that we
episode.
saw from season 1 that takes out or the ship that Galadriel's on, or takes out the ship that Halbrand is on, Sauron, and there's a scene where in the beginning of this season where the beast chooses not to kill Sauron. Like, he gets pulled underwater by the beast.
He also doesn't kill Galadriel. The beast doesn't kill Galadriel, but I think Halbrand, as Sauron, controls it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a moment where it's similar to this scene coming up that happens. So she gets pulled under the tide pool and taken down underwater pretty deep, and she's just like kind of like tentacle got her.
This is one of the most cinematically beautiful things really nice. I have ever seen. And for anybody watching that is a fan of Magic the Gathering, you'll want to look up the card Ulamog the Defiler. And the creature looks incredibly similar to that. And it's a stunning piece of artwork where it's almost the Defiler is more of like a humanoid, but he's kind of got that almost like clawed look on his jaw and a bunch of tentacles, and it looks eerily similar. And so my husband loved that, but like it was a stunning piece of work, and it's one of those things that will stay in my mind forever, almost like with Gandalf and the Balrog. Like, it's on that level of beauty that it will stick with me.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really cool. See the sea monster do a big roar at her, and we assume we don't know what happens, and then we cut back to everybody watching the tide pool, and Pharazôn's ready to like call it a day. He's like, okay, well, she didn't make it, and then there's this big geyser, and she shows up on the steps alive, and Elendil's like, woman of the sea, I forget what the chant is, but our sea king or sea queen or something like that. Queen like everybody's like, yeah, that's exactly right, and it seems to be that the tides have turned, that they now believe that she's the chosen one to be queen.
And it pisses off Pharazôn so much.
He's not happy.
So much that he goes and uses the Palantír.
Yes.
So much so.
Yep. So he walks his ass up that tower. He's like, okay, well, I'll use this thing. And it's actually a pretty cool scene.
How cool was this visually when he looks in there and it just sort of breaks out into,
Yeah, I thought that
fills the room.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was into that.
Glass sort of breaking, but forming in front of you. Like, it was like blue. Mm-hmm. Really cool. And then he sees a vision of Sauron. And the eye. It looked like the Sauron's eye as well.
I love
which I thought was a strange thing to see. Help me out here, guys. So
these two have a future together.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying not to go too much. I was like, it's a thing.
Yeah, I guess. But if you're a fan of the movies, because the Palantírs aren't inherently evil, right?
No, they aren't evil. No.
Right. It's just that Sauron's
got one.
In the movie. That's how he corrupts Saruman.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, he doesn't
destroyed.
have the Palantír yet, so how is he going to be able to corrupt? I don't. So I was trying to. I guess I was putting myself into the movies rather than.
It does the glimpse of the future the other people's. But as for the Palantírs and how because I think there's 7.
There's 7. Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think by the time we get to the trilogy, I think pretty much all of them are destroyed.
There are 3.
3,
left.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by that time.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are 7. No, I'm sorry. There are 4. Because one of them is not attuned to the others. It's not like the others. And all it ever does is look west. And Elendil puts it in a tower out west of the Shire so he can go out there, like out and look in the stone and look back into the Undying Lands with straight vision. It doesn't communicate with the other ones. And then the other 3 that exist at the time of the trilogy are the Ithel Stone, which is the Minas Morgul Stone. That's the one that Sauron gets when he conquers that city. And then there's the Minas Tirith stone, the Honor stone, and then there's the Orthanc stone. That's the one Saruman has. There's the one that, you know, in my head I can see these things, but now that I think about it, the Minas Tirith stone is not in the movie. Denethor doesn't have one in the movie.
No, he doesn't.
Well, he's got one. Yeah.
So it's right there.
So Númenor has Númenor has 7.
They were gifted to the Númenorians by the elves. They came out of the west, and so they're all in Númenor at the time of the Rings of Power. Elendil saves them from something and brings them to Middle Earth, and he distributes them among into Gondor and Arnor. So there's one in Osgiliath, which is, you remember from the trilogy. And there's one in Minas Tirith, one in Minas Honor at the time, Minas Ithil, and then there's one in Orthanc, and then there's one in Amon Sul, which you might recognize is Weathertop. There used to be a tower on top of that hill. That's the ruins there. And then there's one in Anúminas, which was the capital of Arnor in the north by the lake. And those all, the Anúminas stone and the Honor's, the Amon Sul, the Weathertop stone, they sink in a ship. They're lost. There's a period of time in Gondor when there's like a civil war called the Kinstrife. And it's just like basically some old bullshit. The king wants to marry a commoner and other people aren't happy about it. So they go to war. Osgiliath is destroyed at that point and the stone is lost. So you've got the Orthanc one, the Minas Tirith stone, and the Minas Morgul stone. Because after Sauron captures Minas Ithil, he gets that stone. Okay. So that's kind of where we set in the trilogy is.
Right, but right now, technically 7 of those stones are in...
They're in Númenor.
So, but maybe I misunderstood. So in the trilogy, I thought they were more like communication stones. Not necessarily prophecy stones, right? Like in the sense that I can communicate to people that are farther away, right? And that's how Sauron uses it to kind of corrupt.
So 6 of the stones are sort of attuned to each other, and they can be used that way if you have people at the other end. And ostensibly, even in this show, if you had somebody at the other end, then that could happen too.
Right.
But it also shows you visions. But they're they're all on the island and on different parts of the island. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can.
But Denethor, this is really what got me talking about Denethor, as the thing that happens to Denethor in the books is similar to the things that we see from the Palantír here. He sees a vision of the future. When he looks into it, he sees the war that we see in Return of the King, and he sees the Corsair ships, the bad guys basically coming up the river to Minas Tirith, but he interprets that as a sign that they're going to lose, and that's what makes him give up in despair. And he doesn't know that it's Aragorn on the ship.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the end of the Númenor story arc in this episode. We are back to with Galadriel and Sauron, and
Adar.
Galadriel and Adar, and she agrees to the alliance, and they're looking at. She's sort of like, listen, you can't take on Sauron. You don't have the army, and the rings aren't here. And he's sort of like, well, you've told me everything I need to know.
Tell me where the ring is, who it's with, where they're going. And I was like, Galadriel.
Totally.
Girl.
What you done? Why you be so stupid?
She's also got the hots for Adar.
Totally. Oh yeah, you think so? She's
absolutely
dazzled
not,
by
that's a plausible reasoning.
Do you guys also feel that part of what he means when he says you've told me everything I need to know is also the identity of Halbrand?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although he's hyper, he's pretty fucking confident that Sauron's in Eregion, right? And he had that confidence even before he had Galadriel. So
yeah, the final confirmation was important to him, so then he knew he was attacking the right place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here comes the big reveal, right? He's like, hey, you've told me everything you need to know, and by the way, I got more than just this little band of orcs.
The synchronized, everybody coming into the middle. I love those.
He pulls out the horn of Gondor almost and fucking gives it a big blow.
Yeah.
And everybody comes out in the field and they all light their pyres, and it's like, as far as the eye can see, orcs. It's pretty cool. Kind of reminiscent of I was trying to think of like almost like two towers where you just like look across and there are just like so many of them,
Yeah.
right? Like you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And Gladriel kind of has a look on your face. She's like, oh, that ain't good.
Yeah. I appreciated her, like, when she's like kind of telling him, yo, you're making the biggest mistake. This is exactly what he wants. You're bringing an army to him, and she's getting pulled away and is just yelling. She sounded and acted exactly like Cate Blanchett, and I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was phenomenal. I could really see the two and like their acting and everything together as one for Gladriel right there. It was really nice.
Yeah. I mean, she's screaming like she does not want this. She thinks attacking Eregion is part of his plan. She's probably right.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to think so, which is strange. Like this was a little bit for me, a little bit of a weird turn, right? Like it seemed like they were on the same page, and then right away they're not. And I couldn't quite understand. Because I didn't understand, like, I think this gets me back to the first part where, was he playing with her just to get her to reveal where the rings are? When he's saying, like, oh, we could combine the rings with this cool fucking Morgoth crown and, like, do this thing. And, like, I don't know. That's why I was like, is it all BS
if you think of it like episode before last, doesn't he say you destroy Eregion and Sauron with it? And so
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. And so it seems like that's what he wants to do. Whether there are elves there or not, doesn't seem to care. So much the better, you know.
I just have a hard.
It is a little strange because really, what should be happening here in the lore is that there is a war between Sauron and the elves of Eregion, and the fact that it's happening but not led by Sauron. Maybe as a way to explain how he hasn't gathered might to himself up to this point, and everything else being part of just a cog in his plan to show that Galadriel figures it out maybe a little too late.
I guess the only issue I have, I think, I don't mind Adar kind of pulling the wool over Galadriel and kind of already having his own plan, and just I don't know what the rings of power have to do with his plan then. Like I know where the rings are. Like, as long as they're not here, I guess is his thinking. And then I don't understand how he thinks destroying Eregion with Sauron is going to kill him. It seems like he would need a better, like the rings with the crown seemed like a better plan than just shooting fireballs at a city, right? Like I don't know. Like I was sort of, it came across as like not quite put together. So I'm a little confused, I guess.
So I think because I don't think Adar knows or Galadriel that he's making more rings. I don't know if that's something that they technically know at this point.
Probably not.
Other than it's an assumption that probably he'll make more. But I also just realized, like, I knew my theory about him being the Witch King is like not going to be accurate, but it was like a wishful thinking. I also just realized spoiler for if you haven't seen the trailer for the show, I guess, is Sauron and Galadriel fight, and he dismantles Galadriel with Morgoth's helmet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Adar's gonna die. Because how else is he gonna get the helmet other than taking it from him?
Yeah.
And getting him back for killing him.
It's coming, right? Adar has to die.
I'm not ready for Daddy to die.
I'm not ready for Daddy. Daddy!
Daddy, no.
I hope they resolve this again. The show has been up to this episode, I think, really clever and smart.
Yeah, this one just had some weird nuances that weren't totally explained.
The final part of this episode is Anatar's just complete destruction and manipulation of Celebrimbor's mind. He just destroys his mind. So Celebrimbor's sitting in his study, drawing more rings. He's crafting like, well, maybe there's a little shading here, a little love here, and
like, make the gems smaller.
Yeah.
Big ass gems.
And he hears the sirens going off, the attack alarms, because the spotters, the elves have spotted the army reveals itself to the city, and the city is in chaos because they're about to be attacked by this giant army of orcs. And so and it's kind of becoming dusk, like night is kind of falling, and he starts running out, and Anatar stops him. He's like, where are you going? He's like, I think there's something going on. He's like, oh, you're fine. Why don't you stay here? And, you need to focus on the rings. And there's a bit of like, Celebrimbor is like, no, buddy, get away. He actually pushes him into the wall. And Anatar's sort of trying to be subservient here, but he grabs him yet again.
Yeah.
And they keep saying friend to each other as if they're trying to hide their true feelings. It's kind of friend. Yes, friend. It's kind of there's a little bit of banter here. And
you call him pal, buddy.
Yeah. You call him pal, friend, buddy, pal. And he's like, yeah, well, you know what? Go out there and you'll see. There's nothing. We got everything's under control. I have everything under control. And we see Sauron or Anatar slit his wrists, and the next thing you know, Celebrimbor walks out, and it's
power.
It's a
absolute
beautiful
glamour. Yeah.
Glamour.
Yeah.
Like you've never seen Eregion in a more peaceful state.
And also,
so ridiculous how peaceful. Like it almost feels fake, right? Like you're almost like, oh my gosh.
It's
I'm getting vibes of Galadriel's memories from Valinor.
Yes.
Oh, it's like that idyllic.
Yeah.
And I'll point out too the diversity and representation in the elves once again, with all of those like little children.
Here for it, absolutely.
I love seeing that specifically called out, and like, see, they come in every which way, and I love that they are like basically middle finger to all the haters. Like, see, diversity, suck it. It's beautiful.
Suck it. Love to see it. To see it. And it's a beautiful. I mean, listen, everybody's happy.
I want to live there.
They're doing it's gorgeous out. Everybody seems to be like doing art and picnicking, and and he's like, yeah, this is great. You're right. There was nothing wrong here. And Anatar comes out. And he's like, he kind of like spins it even more. He's like, you gotta finish the rings, buddy. You got one job.
Gives him the
and he pulls out a bag of mithril dust.
Yeah.
Like, where the fuck did that come from?
Did he kill? I keep wanting to call him. Is it Nori? I keep wanting to call him Nori for some reason. The other dwarf that's your boy.
Narvi.
I keep wanting to call him Nori from like the original dwarven party.
And we have a Hobbit named Nori.
Did he? Yeah. Did he kill him to get that mithril? Like, what happened?
How does he?
And he also brings him a gift of like a new little hammer he had lost earlier. And I was like, that's a really pretty hammer. Like, he's gonna make great things with that.
This dude is working hard. Like Anatar working fucking hard. Doing good work.
Working hard. And he bribes him even more with calling out the I don't remember who it is that's the statue in the courtyard, but he's holding
Feanor. That's the elf that made the Silmarils, also grandfather of Celebrimbor.
Yes.
We've also seen the hammer before in the first season, and it's stated that that's Feanor's hammer. So it's significant because Celebrimbor wants to live up to his grandfather, and so he's by saying, "Here, use Feanor's hammer." He's like saying, "Now this is your chance. Now you can outdo." What your grandfather
no one's going to remember the Silmarils compared to the Rings of Power.
Right.
They're going to be precious.
Yeah. That's I could do without.
I love the way you said the precious though. I was like, okay, you can say it, nobody else can.
No,
he said it before though.
Yeah.
Only he can say it many times.
Okay. He is the master of the precious.
Yeah. Another moment where I'm like, I hope this is going to be, it's going to be like season 3 opener flashback. How did Sauron do all this shit?
Yeah.
How did he, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's coming. We're not going to get answers this season. Yeah. At least I don't think we are.
It's a way to make us watch it and do discourse over it so they can make a new season.
Totally. Absolutely.
And I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yes, here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, slow clap to Anatar, like just really putting on a show, really showing how powerful this dude is. Like to be able to conjure up like a new reality of sorts, that scale, and to hide like what's going on around. And actually, I want to point out the incredibly, actually, really beautiful shot. And I actually saw in the after show, this is like done practically, but when it goes from when the veil is turned, Anatar's there, and it goes from being this idyllic, beautiful day to the night, like when the fireballs are about to come. Like that's all done like on a set, like practically, and they have like a light that they turn off the studio lights, and then they like pan out this like mirror on his face, so it like changes the light turns as the camera pans around him. It's actually really cool. So it's a really cool shot. Go back and watch
effects.
Yeah, very done practically. Very, very, very cool reveal how they did that. And so Celebrimbor is going back up. It's going to forge the 9 while the orcs rain fire down on the city. And and Sauron walks up and does his like, yes.
It's all
He does the master plan pose. He does the like, bring it, I'm king. I'm king of the world pose. And that's where the show ends.
Wow. I'm excited to, like, it's sad that, I'm excited to watch, Eregion just like burn and crumble, but it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be like morbidly beautiful.
So Anatar, he draws blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's going on there? You think he's bleeding into the mithril? So it's already pre-Sauronified?
Dude, that would be wild.
When he hands it over to him, it's...
I took it that he needed it to
enhance his power.
Like he needed
to do the glamour,
or something. Like he needed to sacrifice himself, or I don't know. Like I took it as like a witch would do something in order to like cut herself and drip blood into something.
I need the blood for like additional power somehow, or or through the pain of it.
But it could be both, or could be.
But I like the idea that he bled it into the mithril, and that's actually
wild.
That would be pretty wild too.
I love that.
Yeah,
that is such a cool idea.
We got 2 more episodes, guys. A lot to get through in 2 episodes. I feel. We'll see. I don't know. When I get nervous when there's only 2 episodes left, and I feel like there's a lot to do.
Yeah, it's either
a lot of story,
pick up really quick,
and I'm pretty sure I will light something on fire if they don't reveal the stranger's name by the end of this fucking season. If we have to go another fucking like 2 years.
This was going to be my question, Drew. Is like, what needs to happen in this this season for you? Because I feel like it could still leave a lot of it up for grabs.
Yeah, but I mean, just like little things like
name. Like
the stranger,
his names.
Yeah, like just give him a fucking name and give him his staff. At the very fucking least, this whole episode's I gotta find a staff. Find a staff. I mean, give this guy his fucking staff.
This long tease about it being Gandalf is
and the
too
Gandalf
much.
thing. Yeah, his name. We still don't know who he is.
With the lore.
All right. Well, that'll do it for today, guys. Thanks you guys for joining. Next week we'll be back to recap episode 7, and hopefully we'll see a lot of the things we want to see that are going to come to fruition. I think we're going to get some really good action based on what I've seen. Thanks for listening and watching, and don't forget to listen, leave a comment if you like what we're hearing. If we read the comments, so if you have a question that you want answered on the show, you can leave a comment on YouTube, or you could send us an email. You can send it to members@CouchSoup.com. And if it helps, when you like the show and do those things and comment, it helps other people find it, and we want those other people to find us because they're also going to be cool nerds like you and like us, and we can talk about more Lord of the Rings stuff and nerd out, and because that's what we like to do, and that's why we're here. And we do it all as part of our group, CouchSoup. You can visit us at CouchSoup.com, and if you want to become a member there and join us, and if you become a member, there's some really cool perks, and it supports us and supports the show, supports the writers and the contributors of CouchSoup that bring you daily content and all things pop culture. So please do that, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody that does support this show. Thank you. And until then, next week, thank you, Chris, for joining. This was another fun episode. Love chatting with you guys. I learn something every time, and I mean that seriously. I fucking I get taken to school, and it's awesome. So
It's fun.
it is. We're having a good time. So thank you guys, and we will see you again in a week. Bye bye.
Bye.
Megolven and Melon.